So at this time, if we have anyone from the public who's going to speak, I think I do have at least one card here. We're going to give you 3 minutes. It's going to be timed by John Chapman, Long Range Planning Manager.
This shouldn't take 3 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, and Arlington City employees who are drafting the Innovate Arlington Plan. I haven't been before you for some time, but I assume you've been finding the time to work on the plan and making progress. I want to express my and my wife's thanks to you for your work and dedication. I am retired, and I still can't find enough hours in a day to do all that should be done. I was a member of some community planning committees when I both worked and had school-age children. So again, my praises to you all. I look around our world and am thankful for the roof over my head, my clean and safe water supply, my safe, harm-free residence of 45 years, and my ability to travel near and far without fear. Oops, I left out clean, sustainable air and breathable. Please don't give up in your endeavor to develop your ideas to accommodate more people and congested in our limited space. Hopefully you will keep in mind all aspects for a quality of life for the current and future citizens of Arlington. I leave you with the fact that sustainability of our planet Earth and our city's small patch of it is absolutely required for a happy and healthy life. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. And I guess we have Carol Stilley next.
First, I want to echo what Anthony said about thank you. Thank you all for what you're doing for Arlington. I'm Carol Stilley. Sustainability is our legacy to our children and grandchildren. 5 important goals that must be part of our plan are: 1, clean air. An agenda item for the upcoming April North Central Texas Council of Governments meeting is start of the 2026 ozone season. They state, the region remains in non-attainment for the National Ambient Air Quality Standards for ozone. An update will be provided on measures to put in place to reduce emissions. Arlington needs to be proactive. Our plan must address transitioning to renewable energy and supporting EVs. Fossil fuel emissions are a health issue. 2, clean and plentiful water. My husband Don and I volunteer at the Lake Arlington Native Plant and Pollinator Garden. I was surprised to hear that the garden was not managed by Parks and Recreation, but rather by the Water Department and the Tarrant Region Water District. Why? They wanted the community to see how beautiful native plants are and then replace some of their lawns with native plants. Our lawns are the biggest user of city water. Native plants are extremely drought tolerant, and unlike lawns, they don't require fertilizers and pesticides, which contribute to water pollution. So let's help the Water Department and get the word out in our plan, native plants, not lawns. Number 3, zero waste. There's a conference supported by the Arlington Rotary Club called Environmental Experience. One of the exhibits at this conference is called Lunch Out of Landfills. It's a program directed at schools. They say, from food waste to plastic pollution, we are not living sustainably. People in our communities suffer from food insecurity. Our lands are reaching capacity, and the waste we produce is increasing exponentially. It is no longer okay not to know, and it is no longer okay not to act. Arlington should be a leader in promoting zero waste throughout the city. 4, green spaces. This is easy. Simply, lots of trees, plants, and parks. And lastly, number 5, sustainable building. It's not just what we build where, but how we build. Are buildings in Arlington LEED certified? In Mansfield's new innovation corridor, They promote building LEED certification. These 5 goals in our plan will help make sustainability our legacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming today and sharing with us. So at this time, we'll have John Chapman, Long Range Planning Manager, is going to come and provide some updates on the comprehensive plan and introduce the consultant speakers from MIG and Clarion.
All right. Great to see y'all. John Chapman, Long Range Planning Manager with the City of Arlington. Oh. Thank you, Carol. We have with us tonight members of our consulting team, Jay Rankins with MIG, Ellie Schaefer with MIG, and Emily Javino with Clarion Associates. We have a lot of exciting materials to go over with y'all tonight, and as part of y'all's preparation, we sent out a short video explaining a lot of the updates to our vision element goals, as well as food for thought related to recommendations. We've taken those ideas that we've received from y'all, and you will see those throughout the presentation as Emily gives us an update. We've done a lot of work with the Arlington School District, as I've emailed with y'all. We will be part of their event next Saturday with the Family Expo. We're also looking at another event that they're hosting in May, as well as being part of the back to school event at the stadium, as well as the 150th anniversary celebration for the City of Arlington. So lots of exciting things taking place. We're also working with the Parks, Recreation, and Culture to be a significant part of our 4th of July experience that we will have in early July. And then we are currently preparing some materials to begin some informational sessions with our neighborhoods and other organizations that may want to have us out for a group meeting and begin discussing an overview of what we've been hearing from the community members over the past 2 years and getting a Likert scale feedback from them as to how they feel about, what it is that we've been learning and our progress that we've been making, and of course, what's to come. We will be back out into the public between July and September right now. I'll keep y'all updated if that changes. That will include a lot of the materials that we are discussing today, a lot of our big moves and innovations, our policies, the updated preferred growth scenario and those metrics, as well as the entire plan itself. Jay and MIG has a big update for y'all on when we will start seeing the actual plan, as we're starting to finalize our initial just kind of big discussions before you start seeing the plan. So a lot of exciting materials coming your ways as we approach the summer and going into the fall season. With that, I think that's all my updates. So I will hand it back over to Chair for item number 3.
Thank you, John. I'd like to invite Emily Javino, Senior Associate for Clarion, who will open our discussion this evening with an update on the Innovative Arlington Policy Framework.
Great, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you all this evening, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the plan. So I'm here to provide a short policy framework update. So if you could go ahead to the next slide, Ellie. Clarion is working with the MIG team on the policy framework and supporting that drafting and supporting the staff team. So we wanted to share some changes that we've been working on with the draft plan that you all will see soon. So we wanted to start off by sharing some overarching changes to the revised big moves, since you all may have seen them last. So the approach that we've taken, since you might have seen them, is that they are much more broad and general than before. The ideas were not lost that were there before. They just took the more specific ideas into the policies and recommendations level, kind of made those big moves more encompassing, combined some big ideas, and kind of made it so that the structure made a little bit more sense for what falls underneath those. We also have some kind of descriptive headers to break up these sections of the plan, because there's a lot of great information in there, a lot of things that were carried forward from previous plans and other great work from the City of Arlington. and pulling those all together with ideas from community engagement, from you all, and your work so far on the plan, and other new ideas from city staff. Next slide. So I'm going to walk through the updated big moves and kind of give you a preview of what they look like now. We didn't want to spend all evening going line by line and word by word for each of the big moves. So this is just a brief summary. So if you have any more specific questions for me, I'm happy to answer those. So I'm sure you all are familiar with the vibrant and safe vision element. So underneath that vibrant and safe vision element are 5 big moves. We have some icons on these slides. If you can see them okay, that just kind of give a preview of what's changed with each one of those. So the little pen icon are minor wording changes. The green star is a new idea that's come up in the drafting process of this plan. And then the blue thought bubble are big moves that had maybe some kind of big changes, big drafting changes, or maybe some restructuring, maybe some combination of ideas. So you can see that the first 3 big moves under vibrant and safe just kind of had some minor wording changes and editing. A new idea came up about supporting housing attainability for residents and employees. And then the last one had some more major changes. So those first 3, talking about updating policy tools for revitalization, that was about how are you looking at policy and economic development tools for land use planning. The second one was about strengthening community safety, everything from response and community relations around policing, all the different elements of safety. And the third was about empowering neighborhood investment and how neighbors and residents and neighborhoods are working together to invest in the upkeep and maintenance of their communities. The fourth one that was new that I mentioned is how are you thinking about housing attainability for both residents who already live in the city of Arlington and employees. So those who work in the city and may want to also live in the city as well. And when we talk about housing attainability, if you haven't heard that before, it's kind of another way to say housing affordability, but looking at all different levels of income and making that attainable and available for all those different income levels. The final one is thinking about innovating in public spaces and recreation facilities. So thinking about how do we really activate those public spaces, think about really unique ways to use recreation facilities. And there's a component around recreation and tourism and sports and that element, or is in that big move as well. You can go on to the next slide. Innovative and thriving, there are also 5 big moves. So grow industry talent, that's thinking about the talent within Arlington and matching it with what the industry needs. The next one, the big move around support, upward mobility, creativity, and innovation. That's thinking about how we are supporting those that live in Arlington to have this path to employment for the residents of the community. Number 3 and number 4 didn't have too many major changes. They were about planning for next generation industries. What are the really innovative or kind of industries at the forefront of economic development for the city? And the fourth one was innovation districts. So this one didn't have too many changes as well. I was thinking about different areas of the city that can kind of have a key economic development focus. The last one was support transformational redevelopment. That was thinking about land use planning that supports thriving places, redevelopment when we're talking about kind of aging commercial areas, different neighborhoods that support fiscal sustainability within the city. Okay, next slide. Under the connected and walkable vision element, all of the big moves were fairly similar to, the ideas were fairly similar to before, but we did some restructuring and rearranging and combining. So all the same ideas were there, but kind of restructured in a new way. So the first big move is thinking about a citywide active transportation network that's looking at the the entire city and how you have a multimodal experience. So thinking about pedestrians, cyclists, how we're looking at trails, sidewalks, mobility hubs, cooling corridors, and different improvements to the entire city as a network. The second one is about creating walkability, but in particular within employment and mixed use areas. So we can think about how people are getting to those areas of employment or mixed use, perhaps areas of recreation and restaurants and dining and things like that, and how that connects to residential areas. The third big move is about improving multimodal connectivity between strategic areas. So thinking about once we have that first one that is thinking kind of broader citywide, are there strategic areas, certain corridors between North and South Arlington where we can improve connectivity? The fourth one, also important, thinking about improving traffic and parking management citywide. So are there technologies and intelligent transportation systems that can support those, along with supporting goals of public safety? And the fifth one is prioritizing safe routes to schools. So thinking about infrastructure that can support students of all ages getting to and from school from where they live. And that includes things like sidewalks and traffic calming and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Next slide, please. Under the sustainable and healthy vision element, we also have 5 updated big moves. As you can see, 2 of them has kind of some more minor wording changes and editing, and the other 3 had some more major changes in restructuring. So under this vision element, increasing access to recreation is thinking about parks and improvements to recreation opportunities, in particular within a 10-minute walk of residential areas. So how is it supporting both the healthy nature of being able to walk to recreation and the sustainable of being able to take a mode there that's not a car? The second one is prioritize sustainability, resilience, and protection of natural resources. So this is kind of a big category of the environmental and natural resources category, thinking about how can we improve floodplain management, stormwater, water quality, erosion, and different aspects of those citywide. The third big move under this vision element is become the coolest city in Texas. I love this one. It's to become known as the coolest city in Texas, mitigating urban heat impacts. So some of those strategies are including things like tree canopy and shade, impervious surfaces, cool and green roofs, things like that. The fourth big move here is really targeting resource efficient practices for property owners and new development. So this is thinking about how can we use different types of programs, development standards, or partnerships in education to look at how can we become more energy efficient, more water efficient, and more sustainable. So that's both for current property owners and new development as well from both of those angles. The fifth big move here is thinking about access to public health resources. This one had some major changes in restructuring based on some ideas that we heard about how can we improve community health by thinking about unique programs or partnerships through the built and natural environment, and how are we improving that health and overall well-being for residents. And this also has some components thinking about the social determinants of health. So we're thinking about how can we improve health outcomes for residents in the built and natural environment. For vision element number 5, welcoming and community culture. Also have 5 big moves here. The first 2 had a little bit of changes from before. So thinking about how are we celebrating and welcoming all people in Arlington. This is really about celebrating the community's variety of people and cultures. And then this has some ties with innovative and welcoming public spaces. All of these have, I think, some across vision element connections, but this one in particular is thinking about how are we connecting people to public spaces, services, opportunities, and then really celebrating those cultural programs and events that reflect and support everyone. Big move number 2 here is about fostering public art and placemaking. So thinking about how are we building local capacity and all the different ways that we can do that to empower residents and organizations to really foster creativity and art and culture initiatives in the community. And big move number 3 is thinking about visible and welcoming gateways. This one had some minor changes from before. I think it was fairly similar. Thinking about how are people entering the city, what is the aesthetic and the branding. This kind of has a placemaking component as well of how Arlington is designating these major destinations and corridors and things like that. The final 2 for this category were new ideas that kind of needed to land in their own big move. So the first one is align communication and outreach strategies. This is about developing and implementing a improved unified central approach to communication so that people in the community can really access the information they need, get engaged, be aware of what's going on, and receive important updates. And finally, the 5th one that we wanted to elevate to a big move is strengthen historic preservation efforts. So this is about protecting and maintaining key city resources and treasures, both special places and kind of landmark places or historic resources that need to be, one, identified, designated, and figure out how to help maintain them so that they can be enjoyed for more years to come. Okay, next slide. So I just gave you a lot of information about the big moves themselves. So as you might already know about the plan, there are the vision elements, these really important cross-cutting ideas. And then underneath each vision element, there are those big moves that I went through that are kind of organizing key priorities for the plan and providing that structure. What will be new in the next draft of the plan are the next 3 things that are organized under the big moves. So thinking about element goals and aspirations. I think you've seen some of the goals before, but we've expanded it to call this element goals and aspirations because we're thinking about under each of these vision elements, what are the ideal outcomes of the Innovate Arlington plan? What do we really want to see come out of this? And a lot of these are kind of ongoing ideas. They're not going to have a check mark on a checklist that you will reach them, but they're ideal outcomes that we're striving to get to. Underneath those, we have policies and recommendations. Policies and recommendations are things that we have identified with the project team of either things that needed to be carried forward from the old plan, things that needed to be pulled into the comprehensive plan from other efforts and other plans and studies that the City of Arlington has conducted. And then also new ideas that came from you all, it came from community engagement, it came from the staff team, and it came from the policy work sessions that we conducted with the City of Arlington team in January, if I'm remembering correctly, that we had by each vision element. So we've organized them into policies and recommendations to provide some additional structure. Policies are things that are we're trying to keep more internal to the city. So if it's something that they want to reorganize, something that they want to change about their rules and operations, something that they want to change about regulations, such as zoning regulations that they want to see changes to, it kind of fits in that bucket. Some of these are ongoing guidance as well. And then recommendations are a little bit more external facing. A lot of them look like projects, programs. They might require some partnerships with external collaborators, or they might need some financial support, whether that's city funded or other external financial support. So that's kind of the organization of what we have going on now. I'm not going to read each one of these to you individually, but we just want to give you a preview of some of the policies that fall under each of the different vision elements, so that you can see that there's some overlap with the big moves, but you can also see how they're drilling down into each of these subject areas a little bit deeper. So under vibrant and safe, we're looking at things like redevelopment, reuse, and zoning. How are we looking at mixed use development and reinvestment? Thinking about neighborhood housing and stability. When we're talking about community safety, thinking about how technology plays into that. What are tools for emergency readiness in residents, and how is safety looking at community relationships and partnerships? Another idea that falls into this category is how we're looking at response to homelessness and coordinating that with the necessary agencies, and what does it look like to have activation and vulnerable spaces. We mentioned some of these ideas before as well about public spaces, place making, and city identity. And then I think I probably previewed a little bit before that there are some ideas in this vision element about access to recreation and amenities, sports tourism, and things like that. Next slide. Under innovative and thriving, we're really looking at all things really pushing the envelope, all things economic development in this category. So what does growth and economic resilience look like? How is the Arlington community growing its talent pipelines and entrepreneurship, kind of creating an ecosystem of that talent and for the local economy? Thinking about what does small business support need to look like or change in the future. And as I mentioned before, that upward mobility idea, which is pathways to employment and good incomes for all levels of community members. I talked a little bit before about the innovation districts, the next generation industries, thinking about what is the next step for advanced manufacturing, and are there other next generation industries that can relate to that? Some of the ideas included things like maker hubs and civic infrastructure. So that kind of ties in with entrepreneurship and small business support, and how people are supporting creativity and business ideas. And then, as I mentioned before, the transformational redevelopment. So what are innovations in the transportation and energy sector that can support these economic development efforts? Under connected and walkable, it's really focused on multimodal networks under those big moves that I shared. So big focus on safety and pedestrian oriented corridors, but as well as multimodal connectivity and walkability across the entire city as well. Looking into some strategies for technology-enabled mobility, and how can the transportation system be both innovative and flexible to the future. Some of the ideas in this category that connect with other vision elements is how can you use development as a catalyst for public realm improvements? So when a new development comes in, sidewalks and different infrastructure improvements, things like that. And then what does a connected city require in terms of rail, traffic, and parking improvements to meet these connected and walkable goals? Under sustainable and healthy, some of the more specific ideas that land in those policies are thinking about food security, health, access, and wellness services. So how are community members accessing what they need for their health and overall wellness, whether that's healthcare or recreation for physical activity, different things like that, which ties into access to parks and active living. There's also the big focus on the sustainable component. So we're thinking about sustainable infrastructure, water efficiency, and urban cooling. That's both from the new, as I mentioned before, the what is existing and how it can be improved for property owners, and new development that will occur. There's other kind of ideas under the category of the healthy built environment and how that ties into development incentives. The environmental resilience and natural resources protection also fits in this category as well. And I think I mentioned the social determinants of health, which are all of the factors across the natural and built environment, economy, jobs, income, housing, all those different factors that funnel into your overall health and contribute to both individual health and community well-being. And then one more here, yes. So under welcoming community culture, kind of a summary of the policies. Some of the ideas in there are thinking about community belonging and making all residents feel welcomed and celebrated. There's this component of how does public art and placemaking and neighborhood identity support that welcoming nature and support that creativity and vibrant neighborhood, kind of connecting those ideas. Thinking about how community spaces fit into this work as well. And then I mentioned before, there's communication, outreach, and public engagement, how people are accessing that. And then that kind of cultural heritage piece and historic preservation fits under here as well. And I think that's all I have. We have a pause here for some questions or feedback if you all want to share that. And then I think Jay is here as well if there's any other questions that are outside of my realm. It might be more on with his team's expertise as well.
Taylor Oldroyd. In the very first one, vibrant and safe, big moves, you mentioned housing obtainability for residents and employees. Are you specifically talking about city employees, or is this a more general?
It was, I believe it was more general. So thinking about if you work in the within the city of Arlington, not for the city of Arlington necessarily, although it could still include that. Are you able to live where you work as well?
Yeah, and I think just to follow up on that, I think a piece of that is the reasons calling out residents and employees is we have people commuting to Arlington from other places. We have people living in Arlington who are commuting out of Arlington, and we know that has impacts on the transportation system and ultimately on the environment and a lot of different things. So that was the reason for calling that out, is trying to create more opportunities to live and work within the city of Arlington.
This is Bill Frawley. On slide 16, the connected and walkable, has there been given thought, or will there be discussion connecting Arlington, especially like the convention center, to both Love Field and DFW airports?
Yes, we can call that directly in our discussions with economic development and with transportation. They are sort of articulating initiatives around that, which we can make sure we capture in the strategies. And also, the next part of our conversation will be around recommendations specifically, so kind of specific projects and programs. So that'd be an opportunity to highlight that again, make sure that we're incorporating it. But we'll make a note.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is Mike DeLambis. I have several comments regarding those employees. If you could, on that line item, just be a little bit more definitive, and instead of just employees, kind of tell what you just said in that move.
Okay.
Regarding welcoming and community, on that foster public art and placemaking, I think we need to expand that a little bit, maybe incorporate some performing or visual arts culture in there too, and not just specific public art. Vibrant and safe, protection of existing neighborhoods. I don't see that in there. but that was one of our major components. Maybe it is in there, but I'm just not reading between the lines here, but I think we need to say that we're going to protect our neighborhoods. Is it in there somewhere? I'm trying to find it. Okay.
These are, I mean, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are truncated for the presentation too. So
Okay.
if it's not in the more detailed version, we'll make sure that it is captured in there.
Great.
Because, yeah, we heard that loud and clear throughout the entire process.
Connected and walkable. When you're talking about rail, I assume you're meaning like rail for people and not necessarily the rail that's transporting goods and services and stuff. Is that the rail you're talking about in that connected and walkable? Or are we going to do something?
There were some more specific components about barrier grade crossings for the railroads, so
rail.
that so I guess it's not so much about the rail itself, but making sure there's connectivity and safety across it.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back. There might be more about the rail itself, but it's not top of my mind right now, so I'll write that down and look into it.
Maybe that'll come in
Yeah.
some more details when we get further down the line. Two more things, if you will. Under sustainable and healthy, I'd really, getting to the water portion that we were talking about, I think we need to put something about Lake Arlington in there. Maybe, over the next 20 years, I think that it's in dire need of being dredged so that we could add capacity to that lake and maybe save money and not have to buy as much water for our facilities. And anyway, that's a thought there. Keep a way to keep the trash out of the lake. It seems like every time the lake gets flooded a bit, I end up with 6 bags of trash in my backyard. So I'd like to, maybe we can capture that trash before it gets into the lake. And the final comment that I have on welcoming and community culture, somehow, once again, instead of just public art, can we incorporate somehow and connect public art, the performing arts, the sports tourism stuff in there, and maybe connect all that somehow. I'm not sure if that's where it belongs, but somehow, because we have, Theater Arlington, Dance Theater of Arlington, and we're not really mentioning the art museum. We're not really mentioning that in there and preserving that and encouraging tourism for people to come to Arlington to view those cultural events, so Symphony Arlington and that. So somehow, maybe once again, it's in the details later on, but somehow I'd like to promote that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
you.
just on that last comment, you will see in the administrative draft plan, we do get into more detail around other art and cultural offerings, but I think the idea of connecting more than just sport to the tourism piece, I think is a really smart idea, because we do have it for, the great sports that are played, professional sports, amateur sports played, but also tournaments and that sort of thing around sport, but not necessarily the broader arts and culture. So I think that's a big opportunity to elevate that in the big move level.
Ninya Henderson. First, I want to say thank you. I love this. I hear that you heard. I hear you're listening in this. I think it's fantastic. And it's also intimidating. My question is, and I'm hoping you're going to answer this sometime soon, how big will this final plan be? It's going to be a huge document, and will it basically be a how-to plan for the city to follow? Like, I don't know how this works, but it's starting to get really exciting. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say. I know you probably can't answer that question, but I'm just.
Well, it's definitely coming together. There's a lot of different pieces in progress. And the last portion of tonight's meeting, Ellie's actually going to kind of talk through what you can expect in terms of the different components, how we're breaking that into 2 volumes, the different chapters, what that'll include. And I bet she can, looking at her, see how she reacts. But I bet she can sort of suggest how much you can expect in each category. But yeah, there's detail on the what, but also the how you get there, included in the plan.
Okay, a couple of more things. Michael, I wanted to let you know, page 18, what I heard in community preservation is historic preservation and cultural heritage, because I think our homes say a lot about who and where we are, and we have evidence of that in our city already, with the log cabins that are present, with the home along Division. There's a lot of evidence of that, and I think investment in that, if that's one of our selected places, then that'll be appropriate. I also want to address on slide 12, where it says invest in visible and welcoming gateways. Well, I like that idea. I like announcing where you are, but I also went, think about the Roosevelt Arch in Yellowstone. It's beautiful, it's big, there are historic pictures of what used to be there, and now there's nothing there. You drive around this thing that takes up almost an acre of land just so that we can leave it there. And I think being mindful of creating something that might not be useful when we're driving flying cars, and life is very different. How are we good stewards of those dollars? So I look forward to keeping that in mind. Is that a short-term sign as opposed to some big stone structure? I don't know, but I think a vision of that is going to be important if we really are going to be the coolest city, because stone holds heat, but also big screens generate heat and they are affected. And when FIFA's here and we have those big screens, it's going to be hot down there. I don't know if y'all have seen the big screens that we have in our entertainment district, but I'm mindful of that. So I want us to keep those things in mind. And that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Hello, Victoria Farr-Myers. First I want to say thank you for hearing us on the big moves. I feel like they're bigger than they were last time we saw these, so thank you for that. Going a little bit broader, I think, really helped. I have 3 issues I kind of want to bring up, and it may be that the same answer you gave Mr. Talambis is the reason, because maybe we'll see it in the next generation. But first of all, on connected and walkable, where you had develop as a catalyst for, it's slide 16, page 16, you had develop as a catalyst for public realm improvements. I want to make sure that in that public realm improvements, I heard water, sewer, all those good things, but I also burying of electric lines. There's a lot of high voltage electric lines, especially in the older parts of our city, that does affect walkability, that does affect any kind of innovation in terms of air transportation, multimodal delivery packages. So I really would love to see that called out in specific for that reason, because I do think that that's going to be an important priority. To follow up on what Ms. Henderson was talking about in terms of gateway signage, I actually, we did start at that, right? We have the flying A's at certain areas on I-30, I-20. We put in 5, I think, across the city during my time on council. I'm kind of thinking a little bit more granular here. I'm thinking of the I-30 bridge that crosses over just when you get off at Fielder Road. That has if you remember, it's kind of like the cage, right? It goes up and it has these lovely little stakes, and it was done that way because there's a school on one end of it. What I'm thinking of is and then I'm also thinking of what happened on I-30 when they put in the I don't even know how you do it, but it's in the cement where they have like pictures of the old cars and things like that. So for me, I'm less looking for big, broad, big signs like that. I'm looking for lower cost, more sustainable things like that. So I don't know if that is what you're thinking. If it's not, I encourage you to think that way. I worked for a really long time. I would have loved to see something happen on the I-30 bridge on Fielder in particular, because that is our main entrance way from Fort Worth. We have our nice flying A, but then you see that bridge and it's, the next bridges are beautiful, but that one is not. So what can we do on that kind of beautification? It's lower cost, lower hanging fruit, easier to achieve, and much easier than trying to design around a sign, as I agree, that may be superfluous in the years to come. And that's also something that there's a call out for partnerships, right? To be able to work with TXDOT and others, and certainly as we look for mobility and placemaking, I think that would be helpful. The last thing, I didn't hear any mention of this, and maybe it's somewhere and it's buried somewhere here. Our landfill has a 50-year capacity left on it. That is an issue that this plan is going to have to confront. Right now, you know, we do obviously make money off of that with our methane recapture system. Certainly, there's been some opportunities, but I think, you know, if we're going to talk about clean air, clean water, I think we need to really somewhere in the plan deal with that as a challenge that's going to face our city going forward. You know, there's been some things that we've done to extend that life of that, but there's just so much you can do to extend the life. That's going to become a bigger issue for North Texas to deal with. So if there's some way that can be called out or dealt with, I think that would be important. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Just state your name.
Anthony Powell, just a quick comment. And I guess it's best under connected and walkable with page 10, but there was a lot of emphasis on citywide transportation and the multimodal connectivity, but I didn't see as much, or maybe I'm missing it, in terms of regional connectivity, the idea of those outside of the Arlington area, how you get into and get out of Arlington, whether it be for special events or other things. And Bill kind of alluded to it a little bit with the DFW Love Field, but there are other key nodes, I think, within the Metroplex that we might want to talk about regional connectivity, or maybe I missed it somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think it's called out explicitly in a big move right now. So we'll see how we do that, but definitely in the strategy. So we'll see if there's a way to elevate that, to call attention to it. Thank you.
Robert Snyder here. Thank you all for doing this. These are all really great. I kind of wanted to take a step back because I know that these are all these policies and recommendations are created specifically for Arlington, but how do they compare just idea-wise, generally the direction that we're going, to other plans that you've worked on recently?
I can answer and then Emily can as well. I would say there's some that are very much aligned. I think a lot of communities are grappling, particularly communities that are largely built out, are grappling with redevelopment as a community densifies, even if that's pretty modest density in certain cases. How are you moving people around efficiently? Can people continue to drive the way that they were, you know, even 10 years ago? That sort of thing. And then I think a lot with a growing community in general, there's a lot of concern around how do we maintain quality of life and ideally enhance that. So there's certain themes I think that are pretty consistent. And then we tried to look at best practices from other places, but making sure that we weren't just, you know, lifting those and saying, okay, Arlington should do exactly that. It's customizing it to really fit, you know, Arlington, the character of the community. I'll leave it at that. Emily, more you want to add?
Yeah, that's a great question. Jay, I would echo everything that you said from my team's experience, other places. I'm thinking about the sustainable and healthy. All of them have innovative components. As the title suggests, I think there's really such a great emphasis on being creative and pushing the envelope where appropriate. But to me, some of the sustainable and healthy and the welcoming community culture have some elements that don't always appear in other plans in a good way, that are bringing up ideas and pulling them into this plan and showing the community priorities that I think are really interesting. The other ones, I think, as Jay was saying, that there are some of the similar issues that communities are grappling with. How do we make it both safe to walk, but also cool to walk when it is so hot? And how do you have all these competing priorities with keeping what's great about your community, but adapting to the needs of the future? So those are some of my kind of initial thoughts, but yeah, that's what I would say.
One more quick question. This is Taylor Oldroyd. and maybe it's not in this policy framework update section, but I didn't hear anything talk about metrics of how we are going to measure success. And I guess specifically in like connected and walkability, slide 10, are there metrics that we're going to look at, like walkability scores and certain things as we start this, so that as we go forward, we can measure our success? So like I said, maybe it's not a policy thing, but what are the metrics that we're going to start looking at to give us baseline scores? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Ellie, I think Ellie will address that in our overview of the plan structure. Yeah, so it is going to be a long document. I'll preview Ellie's Ellie's portion of the presentation. But yeah, we do intend on including some targets and metrics.
Yeah, there's a portion that we're calling measuring progress specifically dedicated to that topic. So I'll talk a little bit more about that.
All right, anyone else? Great comments, everyone. I have a few things that I've thought of. One of the things that we all want to have is a safe city, and we want to have, walkability and good transportation. But we haven't addressed safety by design, and that's something that doesn't cost money after it's designed. That would be lighting, for example, or it'd be like having windows on residences and office buildings that are on the lower level that would give more visibility. So studies show that there's less crime when people are watching. And so some things I'd like to see is some design elements put in there that would be for safety, and this would be for new development or redevelopment. A lot of the entertainment areas that have a lot of entertainment, they have safety built in. You could have security guards, you could have those things, but just building by design helps everyone. So that's something that I would like to see addressed. As far as gateway to the city, I don't think you can have too many gateways. We want to brand Arlington as something special. And I would just say that if we do any kind of gateway for the entertainment district or for downtown or for UTA, they have to be memorable. So, and that could be done lots of ways. It could be done with architecture. It could be done with landscaping. It could be done with, signage, over the streets. I live in Viridian, and they're doing, it's kind of controversial in our neighborhood, but at least people are talking about it. Blue Lake is the main street that comes off of Collins, and they just put these enormous arches that says Viridian Village. They're made of stone and steel, and they're probably maybe 80 feet total width. And that's going to be kind of a gateway going into that particular area. So those are just my comments. Does anyone else have a comment to make? Yes, go ahead, Jody.
Hi, Jody Tuttleton. Ken, just in response to your safety, I think this group, if we do enact some mandated requirements for development, there's a organization, or I guess it is an organization, it's called Crime Prevention through Environmental Design. It's already talks about all these standards, somewhat like what you mentioned. You could say this development needs to follow SEPTID guidelines, so you could kind of take that, what they've already done, and make it mandatory.
And of course, doing those things, we have to make it easy enough that it can be done, because we want to make it easier for developers. I do want to tell you that. We want to make it easy, break down all of the things that make people give up and not want to spend their money on developing. So any other questions at this point? Okay, all right. So we want to move on to the next segment. Jay, is that good?
Yeah, that sounds
okay.
Great.
So Jay Rankin's principal in charge with MIG will lead us through an interactive discussion related to Innovate Arlington recommendations.
Great. Thank you, Chair. And thanks, everybody, for your time this evening. Great to see everybody again, even if it's on screen. I'm excited to see you again in person soon. Yeah, this next piece is around recommendations. So if you want to go to the next slide, Ellie. So just a reminder, and Emily was speaking to this a bit as well, and she gave the definition of policies and recommendations. But within those big move categories, which are nested within the vision elements, we have policies, which are just what they sound like, policies which will have implications for programming, for regulation, different things that, and decision making moving forward for the city. And then there's recommendations also, which we want to sort of nest within there too. So those are specific projects, programs and initiatives or partnerships that can be implemented to help achieve the goals in the big move. So we have been, I think at a certain point, actually, I recall being like, okay, trying to have a conversation around vision elements, and being like, and people were suggesting projects. We're like, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Don't worry. We're going to get to the recommendations. So we've been collecting thit's not as if we haven't been listening. So we already have in a kind of internal draft a collection of different ideas. We also distributed. There's the Mentimeter that we're going to use throughout the rest of this conversation. So we did get some ideas ahead of time. Some people did fill that out. But we want to see if there's additional ideas. If people didn't fill that out, you'll have an opportunity to do that tonight as well. Because we want to make sure that not only are we strong on the policy level, but we have some really specific ideas around, projects and programs that can implement these policies, right out of the gate. Next slide. So even if you did respond to the Mentimeter already, I would ask that you do this again, just in case some additional ideas are spurred as we're kind of stepping through this. We're going to share at least, I won't read through each one, but on slides, we have what we did collect already in the last couple of weeks. And so I'm guessing that's going to spur some additional thoughts. So if everyone can either use a QR code with their phone or tablet, or you can navigate directly to menti.com and enter that code there, 1117-9721. We'll give you just another minute or so to do that, and then we'll walk through. The way that's going to work tonight is I'm going to kind of present. You don't have to wait for me to advance or Ellie to advance the Mentimeter. It's sort of self-paced. So you can kind of blow through it if you want to, as you have ideas, or you can kind of track along with us as we step through each vision element. But as I stated, we'll kind of go through the presentation slides and then we'll circle back to the results and have some discussion around those. Next slide. Did anyone in the room still need the QR code or the code up? No, we're good? Okay. So vibrant and safe, some example draft recommendations from our sort of what we've collected both from the community, from you all, from all those different internal conversations we were having with staff and partners, excuse me. Pursue new opportunity zones or similar state-supported designations to catalyze private redevelopment. So these are using the kind of redefined federal definitions of opportunity zones where there's additional sort of funding mechanisms available based on criteria. So looking at how do we catalyze private development within those spaces. Implementing smart AED and Narcan station programs linked to real-time dashboards and mapping platforms. And then creating economic development partnerships to support sports tourism. That last one, I would say, it's a good direction, but maybe not as specific as we want to be ultimately in the plan. So if, as you're suggesting ideas on the Mentimeter, or you have thoughts after tonight's meeting, if you have more specific ideas on something like that, we'd love to hear them. If you want to advance, Ellie. So some of the things that we heard so far via the Menti prior to tonight's meeting from the committee is home improvement incentive programs, some recommendations, and as I said, I'm just going to kind of pick and choose here. You can read them on the screen. Community police engagement programs, brownfield and blighted property redevelopment programs. So not only, sort of looking at environmental cleanup, but then how to effectively reuse those properties or redevelop them. Encouraging small scale commercial uses in neighborhoods. There's been a lot of discussion about, where that would occur. But if we want to make our neighborhoods more walkable, we need things to walk to. So thinking about, where that small scale commercial is appropriate. Clarify and reposition sports tourism within the plan framework. And then improving communications with the AISD. Again, that's not every single one on there, but gives you a little taste. And then please use the Mentimeter to suggest additional projects and programs. Next vision element, innovative and thriving. Some example draft recommendations: work with local educational institutions and area businesses to connect graduates to internships and entry-level jobs. This came up several times throughout our conversation with the steering committee, with you all, and as well as with economic development. It's kind of thinking about that pipeline. So it's a retention kind of strategy, but also thinking about how do we better link the educational kind of opportunities and programs to the industry kind of component, so that we're kind of growing talent locally. Launching an annual innovation and entrepreneurship ambassador program to connect with businesses and residents and aid in navigating resources. So people who want to start a small, maybe they have a great idea, but they have no idea how to start a business. That would be, this sort of thing. How do we cultivate entrepreneurship, innovation within our own community? And then exploring possibility of bringing a small hotel and/or conference center to downtown, possibly in partnership with UT Arlington. And then some of the things that we heard from the committee already via Menti. Branding Arlington as an innovation hub, innovation district, whether that be the entire city or, a sub-district of the city. Fast track approvals for high quality development. So maybe if, development proposals meet certain requirements or have certain community benefits that they're providing, they could get fast tracked. And in addition, I think, I'm assuming, I didn't write that idea, one of you all did. But, in addition to still just streamlining the overall development approval process. Looking at retail provision in the entertainment district, thinking about small business retention expansion program, not just large businesses, and kind of, trying to attract those bigger headquarters, which could be a continued goal, I think, as well. Housing and transportation integration, particularly for workforce attraction, and smart city goals. The third area, connected and walkable. Some example draft recommendations here: continue to pilot innovative mobility solutions in and around downtown and throughout Arlington. Looking at exploring possibility of community benefits agreements to negotiate for key community resources, including multimodal facilities. And then complete the feasibility study for the potential alignment of AT&T Way as it relates to Johnson Creek, as well as the appropriate functional classification and cross-section of that facility. And then some ideas so far from the committee. Support for sidewalks, trail network, bike infrastructure, kind of more generally. We will definitely have some policy language in the first draft plan that you'll see, supporting the existing transportation plans. And then looking at some targeted interventions there too, which I think some of these other ideas will help to inform. Connectivity to and from downtown and entertainment district. Updating maybe the active transportation plan. Jumping down a little bit, thinking about transit on game days. Obviously, the World Cup is going to provide some great kind of precedent around bringing a lot of people from outside of Arlington into the city, hopefully in an efficient way. So there'll probably be lessons learned there too. Back to the one that Emily clarified, safe rail crossings. So that is of the freight rail, but obviously if regional transit rail was offered too, we'd want to be thinking about those crossing locations. We don't want to create new barriers or unsafe conditions. Shade, tree-lined corridors, and then painted, colored, multimodal shared facilities. And if I'm skipping any one of your suggestions, I apologize. I'm just trying to be efficient here. They're all really good. Next category are vision elements, sustainable and healthy. Some example draft recommendations. Create a small grant program for healthcare providers or other strategic partners to operate mobile health clinics in priority neighborhoods. Evaluate gaps in recreational access at Lake Arlington and implement targeted improvements. So earlier we heard about the quality of the lake, but also there was a discussion about access and recreational opportunity. Promote native landscaping, sustainable yard maintenance, and water efficient irrigation through grants, rebates, and education. I think that was actually one of the speakers at the beginning of the meeting. I was talking about, sort of deviating from or encouraging or even requiring things other than, the bluegrass or just regular lawns. And looking at native plantings and that sort of thing. And then collaborating with technology partners to advance 3D, remote sensing, or artificial intelligence-based tree inventory and canopy mapping systems to identify areas to decrease urban heat island effect. That came up in one of our staff work sessions, I'm pretty sure. It was very technical. Next slide. So some of the ideas from the steering committee, community garden programs with schools, and maybe not exclusively, but definitely targeting those partnerships. Looking at additional partnerships with nonprofit and faith-based institutions, improve grocery access. And we've heard around groceries, healthy food access in general, that being a big priority, particularly in certain parts of the community. Park access agreements with schools, so joint use agreements. Is the form that would take. Deck parks over the highways. Obviously, there's some precedent for that around the country, including in Dallas. And I know there's been discussions in Arlington around that as well. So would be definitely a really cool recommendation. Should we include it? And then, let's see, hospital facility in West Arlington. So medical access and DFW Discovery Trail completion. And our last category, our vision element, welcoming and community culture. Example recommendations, launch micro grant or toolkit programs that enable small scale neighborhood events, block parties, and pop-up art installations. Continue implementing the Division Street corridor strategy to improve the character, appearance, and function of the Gateway Street. And create a unified community partner managed events calendar that aggregates city and nonprofit cultural programming. So that last one, just to call it out as an example of something that isn't, we're not going to build it. Well, I guess maybe digitally build it, but it's not physical, right? It's a program. It's maybe a lower cost, lower emission effort that can have pretty big impacts. So not everything has to be a capital project or a large physical public-private partnership. Some of the ideas from the committee that we already received: public art and placemaking programs and tours, cultural festivals and sister city programs, jumping down the list a little bit, support multilingual access. We mentioned the gateway signage and wayfinding system again. On that, we heard, I think, 3 different comments from the committee already on the gateway component. One of the things we could do on a few things like that where, gateway could be defined in a lot of different ways. I think we're going to run into that in several locations in the plan. One is that we want to, have some sort of a glossary to define some of those terms. But in a case like this, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we'll think about, where it's appropriate, where it's beneficial without lengthening the document even more unnecessarily, to show some examples, because I love the range of examples that were mentioned, including sort of integrating art into some of our infrastructure. But I think Chair talked about, it could also be done with landscaping or the architectural design of a building. It doesn't have to necessarily just be a big stone monument. So we can definitely sort of think about how do we integrate that when we format the drafted plan. Performing arts collaboration with UTA, live music opportunities, and investing in preserving historic landmarks as a couple examples. I think what we want to do now is switch to the Mentimeter results from tonight's meeting. So it is going to include all those things that we put on the screen that were suggested previously because we're using the same Mentimeter. So I'll try to not call it the same things, but we should have some new answers here too. The Mentimeter is still open if you want to continue to add ideas there. You can also raise your hand and Chair can call on you if you want to kind of verbalize some additional suggestions. So it looks like a few of the newer, or Ellie, do you know which ones are newer specifically? Where they kind of start?
I can try to figure that out, but starting at the bottom and scrolling up, we'll have at least the newest ones first.
Okay.
Maybe somewhere in here.
So it's Premier Sports Tourism, code enforcement program, penalties for vacant properties that owners leave unrented. So trying to get occupancy, which also helps with the tax base, expanding housing services for homeless population. Rather than me reading these, does anyone want to point out something that they shared? Either explain to the group or make a case for inclusion in the plan?
Yeah, Taylor Older, I quickly hit enter on a comment about anti-graffiti team. So I don't know if that helps you find previous submitted ones versus tonight, but I think we do a pretty good job about that. I was just recently traveling to Minneapolis and was shocked at how much graffiti there was. And, some people think it's cool. I don't, but so anything to help boost our anti-graffiti is always good.
Great, thank you. Any other
Go ahead,
specific
Nina.
comments?
Nina Henderson. It seems to me that so much of this plan integrates and will be benefited by communication. And I don't know how much of our time and or energy or resources will be committed to this, but it seems like our success in activating this plan is going to be based on communication. And so I hope that we are keeping that as an integral part of the plan so that we don't forget and just trust that because we put something out, we're going to get something back, that there is a check and balance and someone to be listening when someone does communicate. And I don't know how you plan for that, but hats off to you. But as I was listening to you read, it became so obvious how important communication is going to be for success. Thank you.
Anyone else? Victoria?
Sorry, Victoria Farr-Myers. I wanted to follow up on that. Is there going to be a dashboard of some sort that would, with other strategic plans that I've been involved in, there's been an electronic dashboard that's created along with the plan so that, that's where your metrics would live. That's where your ongoing tracing, it would be an opportunity for interested parties and groups. Is that something that we're thinking about doing? Is that
Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, and we're doing it in-house so that we build the metrics and we understand where we're pulling it from and how it's calculated so that from the get-go, we understand how to continue to make it updated. Some of it will be automatically updated. That's the intention or hope. Some of it will need to be manually updated, but we're working through that particular section or chapter that was referenced earlier in Volume 2 about how we're going to those metrics. We're currently working on what those metrics are. assessing what data sets we have available to us, how often they're updated, and so we can start building that dashboard.
So John, that would be something that we would plan to have the public be accessible to the public?
Correct.
Like some of our databases are?
Correct.
Okay,
And
thank you.
it'll need to comply with the new ADA standards for digital accessibility as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Appreciate the clarification.
So, Jay, are we looking for comments that we're seeing on the screen for people to discuss those? Are we looking for additional
Well,
ideas?
we can move to the next vision element. I'll highlight a few more, and then so this is the innovative and thriving. And so if you can go, maybe we start at the bottom again, Ellie, and we can work our way back up a little bit. So providing assistance for potential developers to submit proposals, making an easy and user-friendly process. So I think previously there's a lot of discussion around making the process easier, but I think this is specifically suggesting that, there's assistance from city staff in some way. I know some communities put together teams from multiple departments that are going to end up reviewing development proposals. And so you're sort of assigned a team versus having to sort of seek those different departments and people out. Smart delivery systems integrated with Walkable. Whoever put that one in, do you mind explaining that one a little bit? Anyone willing to fess up?
Smart delivery systems integrated
with Walkable. No? Okay.
I think that actually, I'm sorry, Victoria Farmeyers. I think that was me. Now that I think about it.
It's good it was yours, right?
No, clearly it's not. It needs explanation. I guess what I was thinking about there is when you were talking about, just like there's multiple users of our roads, and so wanting, paving and striping, there's going to be multiple users of our sidewalks, potentially, with especially downtown or in areas where you might have those small robotic delivery systems. So I think we need to just kind of be thinking, if we're going to be innovative in using those technologies, how they're going to coexist. That's what I meant there. Thanks for calling me out. I appreciate it.
Incentivize private developments, expediting the approval process again, particularly for neighborhood redevelopment, creating innovation zones within the city, allowing for an array of uses to support many different types of small businesses. And then I like the second part, encouraging mixed use housing within those zones, many different sizes and styles of housing. I think a lot of times innovation districts are thought of as employment areas only. So the idea of those being mixed use makes a whole lot of sense. Any within the innovative and thriving category, whether you responded earlier, before the meeting or during the meeting, that you'd like to share with the group or explain? If not, we can move to the next vision element. But these are great additions. Thank you so much. We'll make sure that we're incorporating these.
Actually, this is Anthony Powell. I'll add one comment. I see it there, and I think I don't know if that's a comment I made, but maybe it came from someone else. But the idea of the casino consideration and how or whether we choose to include that as a part of this plan, maybe just open it up to discussion to see. I think it's certainly something that is possible to consider, but there are a lot of reasons perhaps not to consider it. So it's a controversial issue. I think my comment, maybe that is my comment there, where I said something about, the idea of, bringing it to the voters. Obviously, it would probably need to go before the city. But I guess if I'm looking at a long-term plan that talks about the entertainment district, and I'm one who believes, even though I'm not a gambler myself, I believe that casino, gambling will come to Texas at some point in time, certainly within the lifespan of this plan. So maybe that's the thought in terms of whether we choose to address it or not.
Anyone else? Okay, let's continue.
Okay, great. The third vision element, connected and walkable, starting with some of our newer ideas towards the bottom. Consider multiple users on the road and sidewalks. Scooter and bike rentals. We need bridges over the railroad to improve traffic congestion. So back to that, those conflict or crossing points at the railroad. Rail to from DFW into the entertainment district. That is the big idea. I like it. Potential utilization of artificial intelligence models to determine potential ways to streamline traffic flow throughout the city. Another innovative idea. Regional connectivity, particularly between Entertainment District and Love Field and DFW airports. Plan the historic Bankhead Highway. I don't know about the historic Bankhead Highway. Anyone there want to explain?
That's a historic roadway. I think in Arlington, it pretty much runs Division Street, probably some other parallel places. It was one of the original transcontinental highways from, I think it was Representative or Senator Bankhead in Alabama, and there's pieces of it that are identified in different cities or areas across the country, but there is a big chunk of it in Arlington. Again, I think it might be Division Street, but that could be one of those sort of like historic Route 66 type things.
Cool. Great idea. Let's see, develop vehicular railroad crossings. We mentioned that already. But at least one other downtown location other than Cooper. I like that. And then the thing about regional transportation again. Matching funds for enhancing, creating pathways. Allowing neighborhoods or businesses to help accelerate pathway development. That's a really creative idea. So as part of existing or new development, people would add pathways, it sounds like. Someone suggest that in the room? Yeah. Anything you want to add to it? No? Okay.
Hey, Taylor
okay.
Oldroyd, not on Victoria's awesome idea, which she has tons of, but I do want to talk about the bridges over train tracks, because I think it's
Okay.
super important. I know it's on there in maybe a couple of different ways, but I know everybody's probably had this experience. You're driving down the road and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's that train. And you're like, oh, and then everybody tries to scramble over to, what is it, west, that goes underneath, and then that's jammed up. So I know this has probably been discussed for a long time. I think we should bake it into this plan to have some viaducts up and over train track on maybe on Cooper. I don't know what some of the other streets are that would make sense, but I think we should bake it into the plan.
Can I, Matt, Bill Frawley, may I add one point to that? I've witnessed it firsthand coming to this meeting today. I was going south on Davis, and I didn't have to wait at the train track. I had to wait at the signal for Division Street, because when the train is crossing Davis Street, the light for southbound Davis goes red at Division, and it backs way up. But one of the worst parts is the number of vehicles that were illegally cutting through the convenience store and the auto parts store parking lots to miss that signal and then turn left onto Division. And one of them almost got hit. There was almost a bad crash because he just didn't even stop. He just went through the parking lot out onto Division, and vehicles were coming. So in a way, in some locations, it blocks the signals at Division Street in addition to just the railroad crossing. And those overpasses take a lot of right-of-way both directions from the tracks, yeah.
Well, and if not done correctly, they can be really ugly and stuff. So, I mean, we'd have to be very thoughtful about how these are done, but they are needed.
And that's part of my communication, my Nia Henderson, and that's part of why I address communication. If you happen to have your map, whatever program you use, if a train is on its way or already there, if you get a pop-up, just like you do if you're on Waze or Google Maps, that there's rubbish in the road or the police are ahead. A train is on the way, so you can know when you're planning your route. But that's not free to integrate all of those systems with where we are. But the integration of that, I think, would be very important for our small city with so many people. I don't know, do we bake that in like we bake in arranging traffic and arranging ways around it? But communication has to be a part of that. It's not free.
On the railroad crossing, we'll circle back with the transportation folks within the city. I know that historically there was a study that I got to glance at that I don't know how old it was, John, but at least 30 years old, maybe more, but it like sunk the railroad. You could obviously go under like at West, or you could go over, and we're not going to be able to determine the best solution at each crossing in the comprehensive plan, but we could clearly articulate the need to study that and come up with a set of solutions that make sense. So as I said, we'll coordinate with the transportation folks within the city and make sure we're sort of appropriately framing that, but definitely hearing it as a very high priority from y'all.
Bill Frawley, just real quickly, there's probably a 99% chance you'll never go under the railroad again because the railroad owns the bridge then going over the road, and they don't want to own any more bridges. Just that could be one of the big obstacles facing.
Yeah. All right. The fourth area, sustainable and healthy. So improve water capacity of Lake Arlington by dredging it. So we thank you for putting that in there again. Encourage backyard chickens and home gardens. Reports I've read show places that introduced allowed chickens saw a dramatic decrease in human food and garbage. Implement facilities that provide for safe walking and bicycling. Second, the NGO partnerships, non-government organization partnerships. Can we have EV-only sections of roadways? So that incentivizing EV is the idea around that, whoever put that?
That was me, Nina Henderson. In Sydney, they have the downtown area, which is the shopping district, but there's also businesses and residential. The only way to get into that district, if you have an EV vehicle and there's a special tag that allows you to get into that district. And that's specifically for people who live there. So in order to park their car underneath those towers and those very deep decks below the buildings, you have to have that tag for a gate to let you in. And so it reduces emissions where there are no trees or low trees where the air is bad, potentially very bad, and only EV buses move people around in that area from one end to the other. And so it's not a huge district, it's not even a mile long, but it's very effective at reducing traffic. And so those colored roadways or specific only bicycle, foot traffic, and EV into the area encourages people. But that also means you have to have dedicated parking decks on corners or places that have entry on the outside of that district.
Interesting. That's in Australia, you said, Nina?
Yes, downtown Sydney. It's beautiful.
Okay.
It took them 10 years to do it.
All right, we'll have to investigate. This is a very interesting one. Lease green space from undeveloped properties throughout the city. City doesn't need to outright own a property for it to be a benefit for citizens. So I think we documented early in the process, there isn't a ton of, relatively speaking, there isn't a ton of vacant land, but I think we all, can think of several properties that you drive by, probably every day, that could be used for recreational purposes. So I think this is a really interesting idea. We'll have to talk to legal, how that'll work. Provide incentives to attract grocery stores and fresh food retailers to underserved areas. and partner with nonprofits to expand gardens and mobile food access. That's great. Are there a lot of community gardens currently in Arlington? Anyone familiar? Belong to one yourself?
Sorry. There's two that I'm aware of, one at the Active Adult Center, and then there's one at UTA.
Okay.
There are smaller plots, though, that have been done at some of the AISD school, funded through the Arlington Education Foundation. But
Cool.
maybe somebody else around here knows if there's more. Mike?
Yeah, I think there are one or two at various churches around town.
I think, maybe churches and maybe a couple of residential areas, like I think off of Indiana Street, over,
I don't
in
know
the
if
Hill
those-
District or
I didn't
something
know
like
if they
that.
were permitted, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. I mean, that tends to be the best practice is pairing community gardens with institutional uses. So the fact that they're at, city facilities, school facilities, churches, that makes a lot of sense. But as this is suggesting, maybe we can expand those gardens or add more. Anything else folks want to call out? We got the deck park in at least 2 locations. Perhaps I-30 corridor, the 360 corridor, possibly the I-20 corridor. And then another one on the community gardens in collaboration with the school district.
Jay, we got one more comment.
Please, that'd be great.
Actually, a comment question. You were talking about the park. You were talking about the park space, activating land that's not, and it's like there's 7%. I understand what you're talking about in terms of like flood plains, but if I'm not mistaken, AISD owns a lot of property, and so couldn't there be a call out for a collaboration? I know you're having conversations with AISD now for some of that land to be activated. A lot of it's been stored away for new schools or other things that may or may never happen. So that may be an opportunity to do the kinds of things that you're talking about if you're talking about a 10-minute walk to any open space or something like that. So just a thought I wanted to mention.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. Yeah, where there's already, particularly where there's already partnerships, right, around community gardens or kind of outdoor play space, recreation space with AISD. So maybe, there's an opportunity to expand that to undeveloped properties, as you're suggesting.
Yeah, I know one of the committee members put something about deck parks in there, but I would still advocate against that. I just don't think it's reasonable to have a deck park in Arlington. Too expensive, apply the money to places that it's better needed, and don't cover up the view of Arlington from people going under a tunnel. So please no.
Ken Cox, I got a comment on that. Deck parks don't have to be exactly what Dallas has. And some cities are looking at doing smaller ones that don't have all of the tunnel effect as much, and they don't have to have all the EPA fans to keep the exhaust out. So there would be openings to let fresh air through. There could be a couple of locations that something like that could be, the game changer for the area if a deck park could be designed that wasn't, a 3-mile tunnel, that could be smaller, that could, spur activity around it. I was talking, I think it was with one of the city staff members about if Parks Mall was redone as mixed use with places to live, places to shop, activities to do, and you had a deck park that went over, I'm sorry, I'm talking about near the Parks Mall on I-20. If you had a deck park to connect both sides, would that change the area and the economic development around that area? One thing that, we look at Dallas, all the high rises around the deck park, I mean, the density of people is very, very high, but if we did something like that was very close to the highways, then it's not going to affect traffic as much. So I'm not against them. But I do agree with you, they can be so big that you don't even, you're underneath it forever. But there could be some smaller ones that could be put in, just an idea.
Ken? Bill Frawley, just to add on to that, they can provide a lot of connectivity between communities and neighborhoods, where when the freeways came through and they gashed communities, then whether it's 360, I-30, I-20, again, even if they're smaller, they provide that connectivity as well, and then it becomes more of a overall community instead of that tunnel or whatever, or canyon.
Anthony Powell, I was going to add a comment similar, and I know, Mike, to your point, I think we want to be sensitive to not creating the overall, huge tunnel effect. But I was thinking about 360 when we mentioned that, the idea of this kind of having divided the neighborhood, but right there at Abram Street, with the General Motors plant, it might be good, might be bad, depending on what General Motors' feel is on it. But, you might have access there for employees, that would, be literally right there at the corner of their plant. And maybe GM would even pay for it if you talk about the expense of creating one. But, that would be an amenity for employees, depending on how you created the access to it. It'd be a little bit of a, pro and con to it. But anyway.
Any other comments? Okay, all right.
Great. Okay, well, let's move to the last vision element, which is welcoming community culture. So some of the newer ideas, starting at the bottom here, create innovative spaces and events for arts. And I'm guessing the comment from earlier would apply here. It says graffiti, walkway art, etc. Diversity celebrations, etc. Probably broadening that definition of art to include performance art and that sort of thing as well. Strive to be the gastronomical capital of DFW with Michelin star restaurants. That's a cool one. Do we know, is there a culinary program at UTA? Or maybe is there another culinary program in Arlington that we
Victoria
could
Far
kind of
Myers,
call out as a partnership opportunity?
TCC Southeast has had culinary forever. UTA just created a new, and that's what's spurring the whole discussion under the UT master plan for the new, I'm sorry? Yeah. Yeah, we have Taste of Arlington as well. John's mouthing something at me, so there you go. And then AISD also has a culinary program, and MISD also has a culinary program, both working
Nice.
restaurants as well, so.
Cool.
Well, that's our AISD. Dan Dipert and then Ben Barber for MISD.
Yeah, I think connecting those dots would be
UT
big. I
Master-
like that a lot.
UTA Master Plan is calling out on the, right now where the old high school is on Abram. That's where he was talking about perhaps a small hotel. That's going to be correlated to their new major they're producing in culinary and hotel management and sports management. Yeah.
Very cool. We also had support feasibility study for Performing Arts Center in the Entertainment District. Create an innovation museum district, foster arts board, excuse me. Can we use geofencing to help both local and visitors to get pop-up wayfinding and community information and communication? Yes, I know that we can do that. That is possible. We do that in some of our outreach, actually. So, large and diverse community gatherings, public dinner like they do in Italy. Local restaurants prepare and volunteers serve food. Is that one of those outdoor like that where you see the really long table down the street? Is that what someone's referring to with the Italy example?
It's Leanna Brady. It was me. Yeah, and I think Fort Worth is doing it
They are, yeah.
now also. So.
Oh, cool. Improving marketing communications around cultural events, sister city relationships, kind of a doubling down on that. Great. Any others that people want to comment on or make sure that get highlighted? Either you'd suggest them in the weeks leading up to the meeting or in tonight's meeting?
Jody, you had a comment?
Yeah, just tacking on to the hotel, Jody Tuttleton, the hotel piece that has been mentioned here. I mean, yes, it's UTAs, but any way we could help partner there, I think would be phenomenal. I've at least been to A&M's Hotel and Conference Center, and it brings in tons for the city of College Station as well. So I don't know how this group can help spur that on, but a downtown hotel of any sort would be something that this group I think we should do all we can for. If it has to do with UTA, I think that's a great partnership that we can somehow maybe have some trade-offs for.
Great.
John, just one
Any
other thing under
comments?
welcoming and community culture. I was curious, there's not a lot of call out about the international corridor here. And obviously we have the international corridor plan. We certainly have the TERS that's associated with that. I know that it's difficult because, you know, it's a major highway and TXDOT, there's a lot of issues that go along with that. But I think there's a lot of energy and vibrance around doing things. We obviously already have placemaking, design criterion. So is there any way we can call that out, whether it's here or in another area? Because I don't want to lose the momentum that is around that particular, because there really isn't an innovation zone, or it really isn't a, I don't know, cultural, I'm not sure what we could do there. But that's something that I just thought would be, that I just feel like we're not saying, and I want to make sure we're saying it out loud.
Yeah, it is in our sort of internal draft in the policy and recommendations, but we will, we'll make sure coming out tonight's meeting that we look at that and make sure it's emphasized enough. But yeah, absolutely, I see that as a huge opportunity too.
I don't know, Nia Henderson, I don't know how relevant this is, but in thinking about the international corridor and some of the zones that we were talking about in our plan the last time we got together, for the international corridor, one thing that I find is that there's nowhere to stay where people feel safe. An incentive to be attracted to that accommodation, somewhat like maybe the caravan, but something that's thematic. And in New Zealand, I found that the Maori culture, once the cities got committed to the culture and creating architectural placemaking, erecting buildings that were reflective of a time long ago, then the businesses got more involved and the people in the community got more involved. But it was a big icon that people had to go and see. So architecturally building something that also accommodates people may be an attraction that's worth considering us supporting.
Great. Great. Any other comments on the recommendations?
Jody Tettleton, sorry, I'm adding one last thing to that. If we want people to come downtown and spend time here to enjoy what's right here, I think we need a parking garage. We've got to have some other one come in with the city. Okay, so to serve the, okay, so it's already in place? Coming, okay. No, I think that's a key point. I think if you want this place to be walkable, you got to get them here and then shut the streets down. We've got pieces of that. I like to see it expanded, and I think we've got to start to it then. So sounds like null and void.
Well, and the other piece of your comment was, you know, get them here and then make it walkable. So we can make sure that we also call out like a park once strategy.
Yep.
Not just in downtown, but in some of those other kind of walkable mixed use places we're trying to create closer to the neighborhoods. Great. Well, thank you so much for continuing to generate great ideas. We'll make sure that the recommendations, both heading into the meeting as well as what you all just generated, make it into the plan in some fashion. A couple of them seem like they maybe were still at the policy level, but even there, we'll integrate them and then make sure the projects and programs get integrated as well. With that, we'll head into the last part of our meeting. I'll turn it over to Ellie. Or if that's okay, Chair, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Let's go. Let's move on with Ellie.
All right.
Thanks, Chair. All right. Yeah, thanks everyone for the really interesting conversation. Lots of good new ideas for us to fold in as well. So we only have a few minutes left, but I did want to share a little bit of an overview of the outline of the plan itself. I know you're probably kind of chomping at the bit to see the plan. So hopefully this is a little a preview that helps with that until you get to see the full thing. But so I've got a few slides here going through the two volumes of the plan. The first one is the plan policy. So of course, there's going to be a table of contents. There's going to be an executive summary. The executive summary you won't see in this first administrative draft. We'll add that once we stylize the plan. Right now, by the way, everything we're working on is just laid out in Word for easy modifications and editing. Ultimately, it will be really graphically laid out in Adobe InDesign and really, easy to read, despite the likely length that it's probably gonna be at least a few hundred pages. I don't have a page count off the top of my head. I would say at least 300 though. But that's another reason the executive summary will be super important. So not everybody has to read the whole thing and can kind of understand some of the key takeaways at a quicker glance. So within Volume 1 Plan Policy, it starts with, we're numbering the chapters 1.1 Introduction. So there'll be some sort of typical front matter, letters of support, acknowledgements, including of you all, of course, and introduction to the plan. We acknowledge Arlington past and present, talk a little bit about history and existing conditions to set the stage for the rest of the plan, talk about the purpose of the plan, how it should be used, and its relationship to other plans and policies. And that's the snippet of an initial graphic on my slide here, is sort of how the comp plan is at the top of this pyramid, if you will, and sort of is the highest order in the hierarchy of other planning efforts the city does. And then lastly, how to read and implement the plan. So we'll have a few sample spreads, screenshots basically of certain pages that you see repeated a lot, whether that be the policies themselves or like the place types information, for example, are pages that occur a lot of times in the plan and kind of point out how to read it and what you're looking at. Chapter 1.2 is really reflecting on the planning process. So here's where we can acknowledge, this multi-year effort that the city has undertaken and all the community engagement that has gone into it. So we won't have a super deep dive into all the community engagement details, but it'll include a timeline and some kind of key takeaways and recurring topics and themes that were heard throughout the process. And then still in Volume 1, there's 3 more chapters, so 5 total in Volume 1. 1.3 is Why Innovate Arlington. So this one starts with some really great narrative that the city has written about Arlington's innovative spirit, why we chose this name, Innovate Arlington, for the plan, and what that means and why it's relevant to Arlington. And then there's this section called Guiding Innovation, where things get a little bit more technical here. So flashing back to some of our earlier meetings, this might be a blast from the past a little bit, but we introduced the city's life cycle concept, go through the 12 place types, and then we've added context zones. So that's adding sort of another layer to the place types and talking about variation and how those may occur in different parts of the city. And then the growth strategy. So that's where we actually will have that full updated draft preferred growth scenario, which is previewed on my slide here as well, draft version. So that's really about, so what are some of our tools and resources that will help guide the vision. And then chapter 1.4 is Arlington's vision. So this is the one we've been talking about today and in a few recent meetings. But this is where we have a section for each vision element, and then nested therein are the goals and aspirations, the big moves and innovations with policies and recommendations, and then some supporting strategies, which are just a few other policies or recommendations that don't really super cleanly nest into one of those big moves. And then chapter 1.5 is building the vision. So here's where we start to get into more, well, not start to get into, I guess, get into more detail about actual development and how that should look and take shape in the future in Arlington. So we've developed development principles. So that's sort of some guidelines for development, whether that be citywide or we have it organized into different types of areas within the city, like neighborhoods or commercial areas. There's a focus areas section. So recall, we've done some market and fiscal analyses for 8 different parts of the city, and we do plan to share the fiscal analysis with you soon as well, so you can get a little preview of that. And then there's the details about the place type. So that really kind of documents visions for each of the different place types, including mix of land uses, community spaces, mobility elements relevant to that place type, et cetera. So then volume 2, this is really more focused on implementation and like a little bit more detail. So again, we start with an introduction explaining what is in this volume and why this blueprint is important, talking more about how to achieve a lot of what's in volume 1. So in chapter 2.2, we go into some more detail about those overlays that we've shared with you previously. And we've also added a bit of content there. For example, the chart on this slide kind of shows where the different subsectors fall across these 2 different overlays when they're combined. And then we've added policy considerations depending on those classifications. So again, another tool and resource for the city to refer to when making decisions or taking action on things. Some more context that's really specific to different parts of the community. And then chapter 2.3, near-term action. So we wanted to make sure that we really extract, what are things the city can do like in the next 5 years. And so we've got several of those identified for each of the vision elements, and those will be refined along with chapter 1.4, which is the Arlington's vision section. So we'll take your feedback from today and update both of these sections. But the action matrices have 5 to 10 near-term actions for the next 5 years that the city could champion, and they also outline, who are key partners to engage with, what's like the magnitude of order cost, is there a catalytic impact, what are funding sources. So it starts to get, really action oriented in chapter 2.3. And then 7 chapters total in volume 2. So chapter 2.5, funding the vision. Here's where we dig a little bit more into what are the funding strategies and sources available to the city, whether those be existing or additional ones to consider to help implement the plan. Chapter 2.6, measuring progress. This is one we talked about earlier tonight. So we identify methods and guidelines for measuring progress and success over time. There's a few things we point out in particular, one being an annual report for the city to complete, talking about progress every year on Innovate Arlington. We have a section about performance indicators and what those might be to actually measure that success. And like John said, we're working on refining the approach there, thinking about available data and metrics and whatnot. And then lastly, the implementation dashboard, which was also mentioned. So really having a publicly accessible live site where you can go see progress towards Innovate Arlington. And then lastly, chapter 2.7, plan updates and future planning. So the comprehensive plan will define when it should be updated, in what form, and that's the screenshot on the right side of my slide here. So we're starting to, and this is just a draft, so things might move around a little bit, but there's certain parts of the plan that might be updated more frequently, and then there might be other parts that happen a bit later, more like every 5 or 10 years. And then we identify the 20-year planning horizon that we are assuming for Innovate Arlington, at which point, around 2045 or 46, a new comprehensive plan would be due, rather than just continuing to update this plan, kind of doing a whole new plan then, like we're doing now. So starting to think about the future of the plan, how to update it, when to update it, and in which components. So you can see we've been really busy, what we've been up to, putting all these sections together, making sure to integrate community feedback, steering committee feedback, et cetera, throughout all this content, and really make sure it captures vision for the comp plan. So we're excited to have you all look at the whole plan pretty soon. I will pass it back to John now, unless anyone has any questions on the organization now. Happy to answer those. Otherwise, John can talk about upcoming meetings and timeline and next steps.
Victoria Farr-Myers, just a clarification for my sake. Under our old plan, the 99 square mile plan, we had like 5 catalyst projects that were called out. I didn't hear, I heard near-term things, but will there be such a 5-year aspiration, like 5 larger aspirational projects that will be called out? And if so, where is that right now, or where does that live, given the chapters you just outlined? Or is that old language?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just asking, am I using old language? Are you using it in a different way?
Yeah, so we do identify several catalytic development opportunities in the plan. I would say that section 2.3 is a little bit more focused on city-led actions versus private development, although several of those are would be in partnership, or to support private developers. So, putting into action like certain incentives for reinvestment in targeted areas, for example. So some of that is integrated there, as well as in the recommendations of, I want to say vibrant and safe and innovative and thriving both have some of that content.
Just food for thought going forward, just for future office holders. That's, having it called out in a major way so that there's an opportunity, even if it's an appendices, or I don't know how you want to do it. But it struck me that I know it was helpful to always have those in front of council as things that we should continue to aspire to as we move through, even though some of the older things in the plan and the old plan had gone away. Those are things that we continue to work towards. So I just don't want to get it buried under 2.2.2. Whatever. I really would love it to have it called out so as an action for governing and also for ordinance change, because a lot of the things you've talked about today, those policy changes are going to really be ordinance changes. Those are, obviously getting way in the weeds for future people to think about, but I just don't want to get lost in the bigger picture. That's all. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Ken Cox, I have a comment on that. The council wanted us to have an actionable plan, and that is the hardest thing to do. This thing is so big, it's so massive, but really, if we can have somewhere in there, this is the action plan, and you may already have that, but you may not follow the action plan exactly, because as you move through things, you find other ways to do it that might be better. But we want to have something in there that these are the action steps to make these things happen. Bill, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, a suggestion that might tie together the volume, how thick, how many pages it is with what y'all were saying too. A suggestion y'all may have already thought of from this consulting or city sides, but I've seen this done with the Dallas-Fort Worth Metropolitan Planning Organization, transportation planning, also Houston, and I helped build one for Lubbock years ago, but it's like a 4-fold or 8-fold summary, and each fold out has a pane, and it can be a summary of a section or chapter or topic area. One could have like some statistics about the city, population, miles of roadway, freeway, et cetera. But they could have some of these bullet point type things, maybe a little more detail, but then it can say, for more detail, go to this chapter, page, whatever of the plan. And that's something that can be distributed a lot more readily than a 300-page document, and also put before city council and thinking about, oh, well, here's our 5 top projects or the 5-year plan or whatever. So, yeah.
All right, other comments, questions? Nina?
I have a question. It's just now occurring to me that by the time we finish this, I will be in my 80s. And with that in mind, I'm thinking, was our number that our population is going to increase more than 40,000 people in the short term? We had 3 plans that we were going to consider, and we came to consensus on which one? Did we come to consensus? Because you're not creating 3 different plans, you're creating one. And so how did we determine, or how will we determine which one we're doing? Because you're creating a plan now.
Yeah, so the plan we do,
When we had the scenarios of if we do
Yeah, I
these
recall.
3 zones, or if we had 3 different options, did we ever choose one?
yeah, there's a preferred scenario.
And which one was that?
It's a combination of, I mean, it was a combination of all 3, but mainly of the second and third alternatives were the
And-
elements that got pulled forward.
And
most.
what was our population going to be based on those scenarios?
Ellie, do you have that off the top of your head?
Yeah, so the scenario has capacity for more than enough households and jobs than are projected. But I think it's John, can you jump in here? 30,000 households, is that right?
So looking at the context zones, and we can't see that on the map, but we have a suburban context zone, which is primarily all of the yellow, especially on West Arlington. We have a general urban context zone, which is a lot of our corridors, highways, nodes across the highways. And then we have our urban core, which is UTA downtown, entertainment district, the giant purple blob that you kind of see on I-30 in Collins up there where the vacant city site is. So the suburban context zone is about 93% at capacity. So there's about 7% based off of the capacity that Innovate Arlington is planning for. If that capacity actually happens, that's remaining 7%. That's all market driven. The general urban was at about 75% capacity. A lot of that, you start getting into the vagueness of what Senate Bill 840 has done, where we now have to guess, what really is going to happen, because you can go up to 36 dwelling units per acre on some sites. Will that happen? That's all market at that point. So that's why we're saying capacity. But we're at least recognizing that it could happen, and we should probably at least have a goal of plans so that if the market starts working its way, that we have a strategy to also work with the market. And then the urban core, we all know there are many surface parking lots. Property owners can decide that something different goes in those lots. The urban core was at about 52% capacity. And so as we've discussed in Arlington, a lot of density can be appropriate in certain areas. The urban core of Arlington would definitely be where density is most likely the most appropriate. Now that capacity, what happens with the remaining 48% is all market driven, certainly by the property owners that own a lot of the surface parking lots. So yes, capacity wise, there is a lot of bandwidth in Innovate Arlington, but what will happen in reality is still to come, but we will at least have a plan that can address, each year as we're tracking what's happening in reality, we have a plan to address, okay, we're seeing this trend line of growth. We need to start doing this.
And so these are guidelines to grow to those numbers that are
Correct.
forecast. And I don't want to say control, I want to say support and encourage in a way that we see as sustainable and appropriate to the plan.
Correct.
Wow, I want to say thank you for knowing all of that. John, just off the cuff, off of a weird question, it is so impressive and it shows your commitment to getting this process through appropriately. Thank you. Thank you for addressing that. This old mind is very grateful.
And then just to kind of piggyback off of some thoughts, we've definitely been talking a lot about not only the catalytic projects, but to also daisy chain a lot of our aspirations, goals, policies, so that when you're looking at a catalytic project, you can see, kind of like I was explaining to Jay and Ellie, take those videos that you see where you just tap a small domino and it incrementally gets to that big one. you can't, it's hard just to push down that big one. You got to start with those small incremental near-term policies and goals. And so I haven't seen it yet, so I can't promise that it's completely there with what I'm thinking, but we want to be able to see that daisy chain. And it's important for decision makers to be able to see, okay, if I'm enacting these policies and goals in my near term, I'm building up to these bigger catalytic projects that are a 20-year timeline. But I do anticipate that we will have those catalytic projects denoted. We've been working with the MIG on creating tables that will be part of Volume 2 that help us understand a general return on investment, but also the amount of resources that it takes to not only jumpstart these projects and policies, but then to continue to maintain them if needed.
Yes, go ahead, Robert.
Robert Snyder. Just curious, kind of going off of that, when are we going to see the fiscal assessment that I thought we were going to talk about last month?
Right now, that's a logistical thing. NAO was unavailable for this evening's meeting, and so I think we can talk about that with our TBD meetings, and then I'll need to coordinate with the team on getting NAO back to present those small area fiscal assessments.
We ready to move on to the next future meeting dates? Any more questions for the team? Okay. All right. So our next meetings are set up tentatively for May the 7th and for June the 23rd. And so I guess, John, would those be good
Those are
for you?
tentative right now. I will send out a survey to everyone, including the 6 individuals that were unable to attend tonight. And I need to circle back with MIG on making sure logistically we can get NAO back. So I will probably prepare the various Thursdays throughout May, aside from the Thursday that is correlated with the last day of school. I understand that's chaotic. So I'll send that out so that we can get a head count and circle back with Ellie on when NAO can present to y'all. And then I'll get some more information about what this timeline looks like with all of the reviews for the plan itself. Jincy and I, of course, will ensure that we're available to answer any questions because, as y'all have heard, it's a lot of pages. So we'll be sure to make ourselves available to y'all.
Okay, and John, you want to give us some ideas about future agenda items? And I know, Taylor, we've got a comment.
Yeah, just real quick, if we are going to have a meeting on June 23rd, there better be birthday cake here.
So June 23rd, that one's definitely up in the air. That is really based off of council elections. So we have a lot of orientation to do with new council members, at least being 2, that Jincy and I will need to do with the new council members on everything that we've already been creating here with Innovate Arlington. But then we want to make sure that, if possible, we can get some FaceTime with yourselves and council at that June 23rd meeting. It would be an afternoon meeting. It'd be probably 2 or 3 o'clock start time, just depends on the agenda. But I still am seeking approval on that agenda. A lot of people need to get FaceTime with council. So I'm still working on that, and I will keep y'all updated as I learn information and we start planning. So June is definitely a TBD.
Go ahead, Michael.
Mike Lambus, help me understand the process going forward. Once you get the draft to us and we have an opportunity to review it, we're going to have recommendations for changes and edits and tweaks and everything. And then we come up with the committee's proposal. Then it goes out to the public, planning and zoning, and city council. How will this committee be communicated with about any potential changes that the public or the planning and zoning or the council gets? And whether or not we agree with that or not.
Jay, Ellie, do you guys want to talk about the process, and then I can take a stab at kind of after they make a formal recommendation, kind of the back and forth between P&Z Council and the committee?
Sure, I can jump in, John. So for the administrative draft plan, we're actually going to do two versions. So there's going to be this first version that you get to, well, sorry, let me get the order right on this. There's a first version that city staff is taking a look at, for accuracy and detail and all of that. And then there's going to be a revised version that goes to you all for your close look, as well as new council members in particular, but all council members, to have a preview of that as well. Like I mentioned, the administrative draft is in Word, so it's like several different Word files for each chapter. And then once we have your feedback and city and council feedback on the, sort of informal initial review, we will fold in those changes and do what we call the public draft. So that's where it'll be formatted in Adobe InDesign, reflect your edits. There'll be an addition of more like photos and that sort of content in there. It'll be ADA accessible. And there'll be a draft version of that, and then the version that goes to the public. So we give the city a chance to see it, all laid out. If there's any other changes there to that or any new graphical content. And then we'll get public comment on the plan, and we'll discuss with that comment with you and decide, what gets incorporated and how. And then we'll have an adoption draft that reflects public comment, which we share in the adoption process. And then if there's any changes that we hear from the reviewers at that time, then we will finalize a plan for adoption. So there's like several iterations between now and adoption. But John, I'll let you speak more closely to the adoption process itself.
So I can speak at least to the traditional process, and I'll have to kind of tinker with the idea that you have related to coming back to y'all and giving y'all updates. But the traditional process that we had envisioned would be sometime later this fall. Y'all would get a full presentation. It would be a public hearing, and there would be a formal recommendation from the committee to move on to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who would have their time, would make possible recommendations based off public input or their own expertise, and they would provide a recommendation that would then go to council. During that time, we will probably also spend some time with council committees on various components of the plan that relate back to those specific council committees. But at some point, we would then get to the official public hearing with council, which would go through 2 readings at least. I think 2 readings. I might be mistaken on that one, if it's 2 or 1, but I can ask leadership in City Hall as to how a more innovative process we might be able to explore to continue to keep y'all involved post recommendation from the committee as any significant changes are made.
All right. Future agenda items, do any committee members have any suggestions for future meeting ideas? Okay.
So I definitely hear that we need the small area, high-level fiscal assessment, an update on the preferred growth scenario, and then probably a formal presentation on the chapter 1.4, which is our Arlington's vision. So it includes all of, a culmination of all of the conversations we've been having over the last months, vision elements, goals, aspirations, all that stuff.
I'm very interested in hearing back after you meet with AISD and the information on our population.
Yes.
And what's happening there. That will probably be after the bond vote, and so sometime in June.
And on AISD as well, and I've asked the demographer, we met with them last week, what is AISD's plans for any vacant or remaining land that they have? And so we can provide an update on what we learn from them ASAP. But I'll be waiting on that information.
I was just going to say ditto. I was going to add the second part about, could we find out about the vacant lands?
Yes.
Thank you, John.
What? Just curious, we have a lot of discussion about engaging AISD, but over half the students in Arlington don't live in the AISD district. Are we just engaging AISD because of their declining enrollment and the impact that would have on the developable land, or are we also engaging the other school districts too? Or why are we not?
Right now, it is AISD that we have the focus on, not only because strategically they do have a lot of land. As we've heard from y'all, there is an interest in understanding, if that land becomes available and AISD no longer wishes to maintain that land, what is your plan? If there's a space for us to be in partnership with that plan, that's when Innovate Arlington can certainly help guide those future discussions. And then certainly involving ourselves with outreach with AISD has become a priority as well.
Nia Henderson. I'll address Michael now and then later after the meeting, but I think our relationship with AISD is integral into our growth, because if our schools aren't good, then who's going to want to come here? What is the point of doing all of this? Because we want to live in a place where we are thriving, and we are not thriving if we don't have a future and smart kids and families that are conscientious. So I think it's integral to our plan, and we need to be working in collaboration with AISD no matter what, because if our schools are terrible, our property values go down. People don't want to come here. We're going to become a wasteland in the long term, in my opinion. So I think it's very important. Thank you.
So John, I guess we could somewhere get that as a future agenda item to talk about what we can bring to the schools and what they can bring to us. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right. At this time, if there's no other business, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Any other business we need to talk about? All right. I think we're good. So this meeting is adjourned at 7:50 p.m. Thank you.